the numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl. With me in Deadbug Studios is
Coach Nez.
Visit us at zpnetwork.com, zwixonline.com, and we're also on Libsyn. I think it's nothingshocking.libsyn.com, but I'll verify that for future episodes. We're on Facebook at the Nothing Shocking Podcast Community Fan Page and Quad Cities Rock and Roll Junkies Interest Group. Our Twitter handle is NoShockPod. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, eventually Alexa. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. We'll read your reviews on the air. Our sponsors are
Ragged Records, Rock Island, Illinois, Davenport, Iowa, Legends Picks Guitar Picks, Milan, Illinois, and Rockstar Picks.Rocks out of Queens, New York.
Our guest this week is Steve Stevens from Billy Idol.
Vince Neil.
Right, but you recognize him from the Rebel Yell videos and all. Yeah, just the crazy hair. He's a legend in a lot of ways. We did lose part of the interview due to a bad battery, and he was promoting gear. So Eric has a little bit about that, right?
Yeah, he was promoting his Rockaway Archer pedals, his also bare knuckles pickups, and also his the Friedman amp with Nags guitars, custom Steve Stevens Nags guitars.
Yeah, and he's got on his website, he's got a pedals, gears, and guitars area for you to check out. So I apologize for losing that. We didn't know it till after the fact. But it was a great interview despite that.
Very charismatic guy, very humble. I think he even said, he goes, I learned something from the guitar every day.
Yeah. He's that famous Top Gun guitar solo. That was him. He won a Grammy for that.
Yes, he did.
Mistaken. Yeah. Just a hell of a career. And it was an honor to have him on the show.
Yeah. There's not too many times we get somebody like a Steve Stevens, as charismatic character as he is, to come on the podcast.
No. And it's always cool when you remember growing up listening to somebody and now he's on the phone.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. He gave us as much time as we wanted, so it was very, very cool.
So is there anything else you want to talk about, or let's head straight to Steve Stevens?
Yeah, let's just head straight to Steve Stevens.
All right, enjoy the episode.
Good night. Hello, Steve.
Hello?
Hello, Steve. This is Eric Nez.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All right, good. How's the connection?
Right now it sounds pretty good.
Sounds damn good.
Okay, good. Good. All right, good.
I've been coordinating. This is Eric Nesbitt. I've been coordinating with your wife to get this all set up, so we're both locked and loaded and ready to go.
Okay, awesome.
All right, fantastic. So, first and foremost, we kind of wanted to touch base with you about Deadland Ritual. We always we have artists on talking about new bands or the word supergroup. I guess maybe how would you kind of categorize Deadland Ritual as a project, supergroup? How does it? Where is this all at in the landscape of rock and roll?
Right. Yeah. Well, we're the last ones to say supergroup. It's we were all. Let me backtrack. Frankie, myself, and Matt have known each other, for a real long time, and we've all worked together in different iterations. And Frankie actually went with me. I did a solo tour in Europe last year, and so. We knew we were looking to do something together. And then when when Geezer finished up with Black Sabbath, Matt picked up the phone and said, "Hey, man, I got these two guys that were looking to do something." And but we were adamant that that we would do it the way that we've always done bands since we all picked up instruments, which is you get in a room and and you see what it sounds like, see what the chemistry is like, and then you take it from there. And it was really cool, the sound that we all created together. Was certainly, from my end, was certainly something that I was looking to do. It definitely harkens back to a lot of the bands that I grew up listening to and inspired me to pick up the guitar in the first place. It's definitely not a project; it's a band. We would not doing any of those, sending files around and people adding bits without even being together. Everything is written together, and it's recorded in a room together.
Well, fantastic. When you've been a part of so many different things and so not projects, bands, whatever you want to call it. When you are so busy with doing so many different things, I guess, how do you go to that point where you're this is the priority for this time, and how do you allocate your time for it being the priority for whatever you're doing?
That's what my wife is good at. She looks at the calendar, and I have to say that, I have a 37-year relationship with Billy Idol, and he's always given his blessings to things that I do outside of Billy Idol, and I have a great relationship with his management, and we're really in touch with each other about when I'm available and looking at the calendar. So that helps. And it's a lot of looking at and seeing when I'm free, when I can do stuff, and I think they're smart enough to know that when I go off and do something, I come back to Billy Idol with a lot of knowledge and a renewed. I'm not looking to cram every musical idea that I have into Billy Idol, which would be unfair to them. So it gives me an opportunity to, if I want to do some of the more heavy, extended guitar things, which I'm not known for in Billy Idol, I'm not looking to change the landscape of what I do with Billy.
When you're writing songs, do you have to be in a certain mode to write for Billy Idol, or do you just kind of write and just kind of go, well, this goes to Billy, this goes here, this goes there?
Yeah, with Billy, I mean, it's we almost have ESP with each other. We've worked together for so long that we can almost guess where each other's gonna go musically, or what we've been listening to. We turn each other on to a lot of stuff that we're listening to, and so it's really second nature in that relationship, and and a lot of it what I love about working with Idol is that a lot of it goes back to the early rock and roll days, and it's kind of cool because we come from a very kind of roots rock style with that, and then we kind of soup it up with modernness or whatever, because a lot of sometimes a lot of bands they get caught up in technology or this and that, and it's like with us, we're always like, does it work together as two guys with acoustic guitars kind of thing. We're very aware of what do we really have here, and there's no bullshit in our relationship working musically. We're pretty critical of each other.
Your style has been notable. You've been, I would say, groundbreaking in what you've done as far as the guitar player that you are. And we've seen and heard of and watched a lot of guitarists that, boy, they sure try to do what you've done in the past. Is that a compliment? Do you look at it as that being a compliment, or do you take that as like, man, this is like a carbon copy of they're trying to be like me?
Oh, I don't. I couldn't even think about people that if people are influenced by maybe something I've done, I think it was, it's a compliment for sure. But I'm a real musical chameleon, I mean, the different styles that I add to music, that I'm involved in are usually to challenge myself, because I'm never one to kind of, there's never been a moment where I kind of like go, wow, man, I'm really good. Or, it just doesn't, it's never happened for me like that. It'd be nice, but sure, being influenced is great. I'm certainly influenced by a lot of my musical heroes, and my biggest musical influence was Steve Howe from Yes, but I don't sound anything like him. So I think it's great to if I can influence people and then they make it their own. That's exactly what I've done in my career.
You mentioned, the way a lot of modern musicians record, and that's, Dropbox this file to that person and record it separately. And is that something you've ever tried, or have you been pretty good at staying away from that?
It certainly wouldn't work for Billy Idol, and it would seem so weird, I don't know. I think rock and roll songs are about telling a story, and the progression in that story from the let's say the first verse to the last verse should, I know that bands like cut and paste and they copy things, and to me it's like, you should never, as a guitar player, you should never play the first verse the same way that you would play the last verse, and the intensity you play the last chorus is always different for me than the first chorus. So it wouldn't work for me. One of the great things about Deadland Ritual is, I want to hang in a room with Geezer Butler and find out, some of those incredible stories about the early days of Black Sabbath and what it was like to record those records. And, sharing a file with him ain't gonna, I'm not gonna get the scoop on any of that stuff. So I'm all for, I'm all for rehearsing and being in a room together, and music should be about a conversation. It's not about, just playing your part in isolation from the other instruments. That would seem really weird to me.
This kind of goes back to the Billy Idol thing. Is you had said that how you and Idol work together, and the music that you have created with Billy Idol is seemed very timeless. It just kind of holds the hand of time. It just seems like it's as relevant now as it was back in 1984 or what have you. With that being said, is that the approach that you take when you work with somebody like Billy Idol? Hey, we're not going to recreate the wheel. We are going to stay with the roots of what we've always kind of done.
It's, you want to stay true to your what you do, at the same time as, progress. I think the last record that Billy and I did, Kings and Queens in the Underground, with Trevor Horn producing, it had a flavor of the 80s, but it also, it was a modern kind of take on it. And there were 2 tracks that we recorded with producer Greg Kirsten, who's known for Adele and a lot of, current artists. So, Billy and I are smart enough to know that, we do what we do, and it's great to present it to other people, especially when it calls on, producers. But I mean, the worst thing would be for us to sit down and go, hey, let's write another Rebel Yell or something.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't. We've done that, and we play that live, and we have that in our arsenal. And but for us, it's kind of cool to like cover new musical ground and challenge ourselves a little bit.
Kind of following up on that, you mentioned Rebel Yell, and there was that. I'd like to ask artists that had a real peak in popularity at a certain point. Does the record label ever come back to you and be like, now you got to sound like this? I want the next album to have another Rebel Yell on it. Did you ever feel pigeonholed once you guys had that certain level of success, and how did you adjust with it if you did?
No, I mean, we felt the pressure after this, obviously after the success of Rebel Yell, and we did Whiplash Smile. And also we suddenly became the breadwinner at a small label. Chrysalis was, quite small, Billy's label. So, whereas before Rebel Yell, they really kind of just, it was almost like they forgot about us, and then, you become this breadwinner at the label. But I think that was, we were fortunate. We had such a good producer, Keith Forsey, who kind of, they didn't fuck with us. And at the time, Bill Aucoin was the manager, and he was a force to be reckoned with. So we were kind of shielded from any of that kind of political record label stuff. So we were pretty oblivious. We were even oblivious to how successful we were becoming because, we were. Rebel Yell became successful while we were on the road on a 10-month tour, and suddenly, oh wow, we're playing 5,000 seat. Oh wow, now we're playing to an arena. Hey, that's cool,
You won a Grammy with your contributions to the anthem to Top Gun back in the day. What was that like, being a part of something with the movie that became so, I guess maybe so successful that maybe they didn't really realize what they had when it came out, and people of all ages kind of gravitated to that movie at the time during the Cold War. And for you to get such the accolades that you did, how complex was it to be a part of that anthem? And can you just give us a little bit more about the story?
Top Gun was written, the score for it was written by Harold Faltermeyer, who was, again, Billy's producer, Keith Forsey's, one of his buddies. They all started together working in Germany for Giorgio Moroder, doing like Donna Summer's records. And Giorgio still, Harold still lives in Munich. So when we were working on, I'll try and make this is a long story, but
yeah.
When we were working on Whiplash Smile, Harold came in to do the keyboards on it. So we're in the studio, we're working, and he pulls me aside. He says, I'm working on this, I'm doing the score for this new, this movie with Tom Cruise. I think I maybe I was aware of Risky Business by then. And then he had this is the days of VHS video, he had videotape, shows me a little bit of the footage. And now you look at that aerial footage and it looks like little models. But back then it was like, I went, wow, that's great, So he asked me to contribute to it. They had the theme written. He wrote that. And so we set up, I remember it was after a day of working on Billy Idol stuff. So my gear was already set up, and we put Top Gun up on the multi-track, and I think it was, recorded in about two hours or so, and then I never really thought about it again. It was just like an afterthought kind of thing. And then Harold called me and said, hey, we got nominated for a Grammy. We're going to win this fucking thing, and obviously the film was a success by then. And the Grammys that year were held in Los Angeles. I was living in New York, but as luck would have it, Billy and I were performing on the Grammys. We did To Be a Lover that year, and so I was already there. For me, it was it was great because we won for great for best instrumental performance, which meant I was being recognized for my guitar performance, and also it was kind of great for my parents, who had put up with years and years of me making that horrible noise in the basement with my guitar. It kind of validated their suffering. So it was just a great evening, and also performing with Billy, and and it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was all, once again, it was working within people in the Billy Idol camp, and we were all like very proud of what we had achieved.
Man.
Well,
Go ahead, Eric.
Bob, I thought Bob had a question, but I'm going to go move on to the next thing. The Atomic Playboys is one of my all-time favorite albums, and if you asked me to, what was my favorite song on that album, I couldn't tell you that because I loved them all, and I still love them all. I was so bummed out when
Wow.
when the Atomic Playboys, it was the one-off thing. I thought it was going to kind of go on. Yeah, that was my dream. 1989, I was a senior in high school. I guess, what caused the Atomic Playboys not to go further than what it did? And I just felt like you guys were such on a roll when that album came out. And at that time in 1989, the music landscape was changing, as far as, metal and hard rock and progressive rock, alternative rock were kind of merging together. What's the story? Why did it not kind of go any further than where it did?
Well, largely it was a really expensive record to do, and probably my fault. I was used to working in a way with Idol, and I was used to touring in a way, and when we went out, I brought sound and lights with me and full crew and all this, and I should have approached it as if it was a new baby band, but I was I wasn't willing to do that. And it was, it just was, it felt like it was out of step a bit for the times. It was a really good band, and Perry McCarty, sang his heart out on that record and worked really hard, and he couldn't have been a cooler guy to work with. Everyone in that band was just, were my buddies and stuff, but it was very expensive to keep it out on the road, and it was, the record didn't. I think the way in that genre at that time, the only way bands were like selling numbers was with ballads, either Mr. Big or Extreme. These bands were all of that genre were having hits with ballads, and I wasn't willing to release a ballad because I didn't feel that would have represented the band or whatever, and then the sales for the album weren't what were expected, and certainly didn't reflect the amount of money that was paid on the record. We had Bo Hill produce it, and H.R. Giger do the cover. It was a very expensive record, so I kind of like went, it just, I couldn't afford to keep it going, basically.
With that being said, was 1989, and I refer to that year as well as my senior year in high school. But that being said, is that I noticed so many I don't know, maybe groundbreaking albums that were released that year. The Cult Sonic Temple, we had Disintegration by The Cure, and I can go on and on, Faith No More, The Real Thing. And I put the Atomic Playboys right up there with it because it was so unique in its sound, and it just had a sonic element that nobody else ever had. And I kind of felt like it fell right in line with everything else that was coming out then because, like you said, well, there was some of the hair bands that were doing the ballads and what have you, and you guys totally stayed away from that. And that was my hopes, that it was like, okay, this is another progression in the world of rock and roll, but we never got to see it again. So I was kind of bummed because I put it right up.
Yeah.
I put it up on the pedestal with those other albums. But but that being said, I know you had worked with Michael Monroe in '92 and with Jerusalem Slim, and once again, it's another album that was a one-off type thing. And we had Michael on right when we first started the podcast about 3 years ago, and we tried to kind of discuss Jerusalem Slim with him, and he really did not want to talk about that album at all. He just kind of wanted to keep it in the past, and he didn't really have any kind of story behind it. I was kind of hoping maybe you could kind of shed a little light about Jerusalem Slim. Is there anything more to it that maybe, I guess maybe was it noteworthy for you to make a comment about?
Not really. I think it was one of those. I mean, I have such respect for Michael, and the time that I spent with him was a hell of a lot of fun. But it's one of those. Talk about bad timing, and it was I remember we were mixing the record, and Nirvana's Nevermind was out. And Michael Wagner, who was the producer on it, said, "Hey, have you heard this new? This is cool, you know." And he played some things, and I went, "Uh-oh, we're in trouble," because we sounded nothing like that, you know. I always look at everything that I've done, you know, project-wise and stuff, as a learning experience, and it was just, sometimes things look great on paper, and I think the label probably thought it was a good, this would work out well. I think musically, Michael and I were just looking in different directions and stuff, and it just didn't work out. I have no bad feelings about it or anything like that. And as I said, Michael is one of the great rock and roll frontmen.
I want to go back to, you talked about, 92 when Nirvana came out, and, in the 80s, there was different styles of music, and Billy Idol kind of had his own little lane. But when Nirvana and Pearl Jam hit, it seemed like a lot of bands weren't allowed to continue. And you mentioned we were, being in trouble, but is that really how it felt? Like things were changing, or did you see it coming? And I don't know.
I'm old. I'm an older guy, so I've seen it happen quite a number of times. I remember. I started in a cover band playing the Long Island circuit that Twisted Sister is known for. Mm-hmm. And, we're out there, and my band, was like neo-prog kind of, band. We're doing like Yes and Genesis and all this kind of stuff. And those kind of guitar players, and Zeppelin, those were my heroes. And then I left that band and, joined an original band. And that's like when CBGBs was happening and stuff, but it seemed like the guitar players who maybe grew up weaned on the early 70s stuff embraced a lot of the kind of new wave or whatever, and we kind of used it as a flavor. Like you were still, if you think about Devo, those guys could really play, and they were great musicians, although they were creating something entirely new. But what I did notice with some of the grunge stuff was that musicians were dumbing down just for the sake of dumbing down, right. Which is never a good thing. Guys that I knew that were really capable of musicians were suddenly playing this kind of, hacking away on the guitar with 3 chords just to kind of stay current, and I knew that was a losing situation. And that's when that really happened was for me when I decided to stop playing electric guitar. I did a flamenco guitar record that year because I was like, well, this is not for me right now. I'm going to wait till it. And I knew it would come back cyclical. Music is always like that. But that said, there was always Soundgarden, and I thought, well, and Alice in Chains, and those. I guess they're considered grunge bands, but they're really good, great singing and great melodies, and to me, I don't care if bands are simplistic or whatever, but there has to be something melodically that's going to pull my ear and get me turned on. So. And then I remember, when I was with Vince Neil, somebody from the record company was asking us to wear flannel shirts or something. I went, get the fuck out of here. Why the fuck would you sign Vince Neil? And it's like, that it just didn't make any sense to me. I wasn't going to suddenly, be something that I'm not. The fans can tell. The fans know when you're full of shit. So. But there's always cycles in music. There will continue to be, and that's how music evolves.
Well, it's funny to me because, if you listen to classic rock radio, you'll hear Nirvana followed by Metallica, followed by Billy Idol, followed by Poison. It's all of them are together, and it's like it felt like that. I was in junior high school, and all that happened, and I was a big fan of, the, Aerosmith and White Line and Billy Idol and Extreme and all these bands. And so I kind of didn't get it when it switched. And it almost felt like it was you're against us or you're with us kind of thing. When, like, it happened in the 80s, Yes went kind of pop, and so did Genesis. And, Kiss and Aerosmith were allowed to change, and Alice Cooper. It just seemed like it was more of us against them in the 90s than it was in the 80s. But I don't know. Did it ever feel competitive?
Yeah, I don't know. I always looked at it. I always looked at being a guitar player as an occupation or a skill set, and although you're in the music business, I'm always aware of that part of it. But for me, it's just it gave me the opportunity. Things happen for a reason, and it gave me the opportunity to do a flamenco record, and I traveled the world. I went to France and England and worked with people, just traveling with my acoustic guitar, creating this record that was really, really important for me as a musician, and kind of reconnecting with why I picked up the instrument in the first place. So I just think that everything happens for a reason. I know that's a very kind of Zen way of looking at it, but it's I guess that's what when I wake up in the morning, have my cup of coffee and pick up the guitar and go, okay, what are you going to bring to me today? Not what am I going to bring to the instrument? What's the instrument going to bring to me? And I'm just happy to play guitar. I mean, I'm 60 years old this year, and I get to I get to play in two incredible bands and still work with the guy I started with, and I'm really gifted to be able to do this. So if there's some bumps in the road, I don't big deal. That's life.
You had mentioned CBGBs, and obviously you're a part of that that East Coast scene back in the 70s and 80s. And we've had many artists from the New York area talk to, and they've just brokenhearted that the rock scene in the East Coast and New York City itself has suffered so greatly, as well as out on the West Coast with the Sunset Strip, and rock and roll scenes are just not there like they used to be. Do you ever foresee a scene popping up somewhere, in some part of the United States again? What does it feel like to you?
Yeah, I mean, shit. Not only, in New York, not only is there not places to play, but there's not even musicians can't even afford to live there. A lot of musicians I know are like moving to places like Detroit and cities that are more affordable, and yeah, I mean it's strange because I've just returned from doing the festivals in Europe with Deadland, and the rock scene is so vibrant over there, and it's there's a lot of bands making new music, and kind of the audience is still growing. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just indicative of what's going on in the States at the moment, with it's almost feels like the record companies don't want to invest in rock bands for a number of reasons. They don't see it as financially viable, not all labels, but the majority of the majors. And B, with pop music, they can control it. They control, the writers, who's going to write the tunes, who's going to produce it. And then they just kind of find the next pretty face to be the singer, or, largely female right now. But I see, man, there's so much people, there's so many people that are still, young, picking up guitars, and I see somewhere in our future as a resurgence of rock and roll. I don't know what form that'll take, but there's a large amount of very young people who are still excited about learning how to play guitar. So I can only imagine, at some point the dam's going to burst.
As you say that, you would see bands like a Greta Van Fleet or the Struts or bands like those that are kind of carrying that torch for rock and roll. What do you feel as though that's what's going to take for rock and roll to get back into the forefront of popular culture, of pop music? Do you ever foresee that ever being an equation ever again?
Well, it's got to become exciting again, for people. People, have to want to be, there's all that adage of, as a front man, you want to be the guy the girls want to fuck and their boyfriends want to be. So, it's rap music really took that ball of, when grunge hit, it was like not cool to be a rock star. It was, don't flaunt your wealth, don't have the cars, don't have the girls, don't have all this. Well, what are you left with? It's kind of, and I agree that, it did get, ridiculous because whenever the image is stronger than the music, then that's not good either. But when you took the fun element out of music, then fans are not going to want to go anymore. So, but I think like the Struts are a great example of, people, going, wow, that guy's a lead singer. That's a band. That's, there's some excitement about it. So, that I think that's really an important element of it. It's because, I remember when I was a kid, when I'd go see the bands, it was like, it was almost like they came from another planet. You'd see them and it was like they were so exotic. Yeah, I think, hopefully, we'll see a resurgence in that kind of larger than life rock star thing. I think that's a good thing, as long as the music is there.
Absolutely.
How important is it for rock artists to embrace other genres? I mean, you played with Michael Jackson, recently Metallica and Lady Gaga did stuff. Does that play a role in, being, helping rock get back to the forefront?
Well, I think if you only listen to the kind of music you make, then it becomes like a retarded son or kid or something. It's a horrible word to use. It's a bastard or whatever, But talking to Geezer, Sabbath started as a 12-bar blues band, and Tony Iommi was a fan of like Django Reinhardt and all that stuff. And with Deadland, I think one of the things that that's unique about it is that I'm not, I'm not some guy who was just like looking to, play Sabbath. It's a hard thing, but I bring influences that are maybe outside of rock into the element. I mean, if you think of any of our classic bands, like look at Zeppelin. Jimmy Page was a fan of blues and folk and Eastern music, and he was putting this, creating this gumbo of music. And I find a lot of the bands sometimes, they're just kind of like rehashing the same thing in their own genre, and it's for me, I couldn't even imagine doing that, So yeah, I mean, and it's also a great way to, it's for a guy like me who's been playing the instrument for that long, where am I going to get new ideas from? Where am I going to learn new stuff from? So I listen to a lot of soundtracks, a lot of kind of obscure stuff that maybe I wasn't aware of when I was a kid and stuff, and even Bob Dylan records and stuff I listen to for lyrics and things, and I very rarely listen to metal. I just don't, it's not, unless there's like a reissue or something with bonus tracks on it. I'm very careful about. I don't want it to be an incestuous kind of thing.
Do you have any more questions, Bob? I have one more. Do you have one more?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my last question is with 2000, we're kind of halfway through 2019 or going into 2020. What can we expect from Deadland Ritual? What can we expect from you outside of the realm of Deadland Ritual?
Right. Yeah. Well, we've only recorded 3 tracks so far, although there's about 10 of them written now. So we didn't plan on going out and playing live before recording the record. It just worked out logistically that way. But in a way, I'm really glad because we got to road test some of these songs and kind of like really hone them down and, you know, see the audience reaction and things like that. So we've got an album to do, and then we'll be touring next year. And it's just so much fun for me to be in that band and play on stage. And it's, you know, we create quite a sound together. I got to say, you know, originally we weren't adamant on it being a one guitar band, but the sonic thing that is happening between the 3 instruments is so cool and so unique that, you know, we went, no, this has to be a 3-piece, you know, instrumental, three instruments band to have this kind of impact. So I just love playing with those guys. It's a really cool musical thing we're doing. And then let's see, I head out in about 6 days for a co-headline tour with Billy Idol and Bryan Adams, and we do that, and then there's some Mexico dates with Billy Idol, which I've never played south of the border with him, and so it's kind of yeah, it's cool. I mean, I'm just like you know, I just go, I get a call and they say, hey, you want to come play here? And I, you know, it's kind of cool to just kind of like still be playing guitar and playing to new audiences, and I still fucking love the instrument. It's every day that I get to play guitar. To me, it really is a blessing, man. I'm really, really fortunate I get to do what I do.
All right. Well, I think we're out of questions for you. Run out of our allotted time, but we wanted to thank you so much for doing this with us. You've been fantastic. Before we leave,
it's my pleasure.
Yeah. Before we leave, is there anything else that you would like to plug or promote?
No. No, I think that's about it.
Well,
I think we've covered everything.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining the Nothing Shocking podcast tonight. Tell your wife.
My pleasure, guys.
Yeah. Tell your wife we said thank you so much too for coordinating all this. Last but not least, we've got about 4 episodes ahead of yours. So we're looking at maybe about 3 to 4 weeks, and then I will send an attachment link all edited and ready to go for download, and I'll send it email via to your wife. How about that?
Awesome. Great.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Take care.
You.
Bye-bye.
When the black is rough and the sky is choppy, no power in the verse can stop me. Knowing you can't win for trying, man. I'll be holding your odds, I'll be holding your hand. I'll be mooning the blue sun and nights, and I'm good. sky